Your reaction to the fiscal update?
Thank you for having me, Evan. Yeah, well, we think it's a bit thin. We are glad to see some of the measures, whether it's about ventilation and more health supports for COVID, the $40 billion for Indigenous child welfare and supports, I hope results in systemic transformation. But we are seeing some missing pieces. You know, there's nothing really in there for moving forward for climate mitigation and adaptation, only a little bit for disaster relief. Yeah, so there's a couple other things that we're happy and unhappy about, but it's kind of middle and thin.
Oh, okay, so let me just give some people details. There's $5 billion just for the BC disaster relief. That's $5 billion. There's a 25% credit for small businesses to upgrade ventilation, which is what you just mentioned. There's a $70 million ventilation for public buildings, which in the scheme of things is not a lot. But that natural, let me just go back to that, $5 billion for the natural disaster recovery, that's real money.
It is, and I'm very happy about that in a sense, and I'm thinking about everyone who's currently still very literally mopping up. And I think what we're looking for, it's great to see immediate support for recovery, but we're looking forward, and these disasters are going to be coming one after another continuously across the country. And yes, this is a fiscal update, but this is an emergency, so we would hope that that mitigation strategy and that adaptation plan would get going now.
But, okay, so I'm just trying to figure out what else you, as the Interim Green Party leader, would have liked to see. I mean, they have closing in on $71.2 billion in new measures over the next 6 or 7 years. So there's, I mean, we're really at unprecedented levels of spending. Are you saying what else would you have liked to see in there?
So a couple things. One is that, you know, in terms of mitigation plan, I'm happy to see there's a general plan for an adaptation strategy, but that needs to go immediately to municipalities who are going to be getting ready. The other thing that we're always hoping for is transformation. And so in here, there's a lot of different pieces that are supporting small businesses. That's absolutely wonderful to see, but it's missing the piece for a lot of people in general. It's also great to see the help for seniors, but you're missing for people with disabilities. So we're looking really from the transformative aspect for support for every single Canadian to get through this next period of the pandemic still. And maybe that was a little too much to hope for out of a fiscal update.
Can I just ask, because the Green Party obviously had a poor election performance, but you know, when Elizabeth May was the leader, one of the things she said is we have an economic costing budget. People think we just want to spend, but we don't. Now that you're the interim Green Party leader, you say we wanted help for every single Canadian. What are the economically, are there any limits to the spending from the Green Party's point of view?
Absolutely. And I think that there is a strategy in supporting Canadians, because when you give individuals the support they need to survive, so this is the basics of food, water, housing, also a big thing that I don't think was adequately addressed, it goes directly back into the economy and supports us in turn. And so really you'll see that rebalance. But what we're looking at is, instead of looking at GDP only, we would like to look at well-being and measures of well-being to show that we are actually progressing as a society, because GDP tells you very little about how we're actually doing. It just says, okay, you have more wealth accumulation. So yes, absolutely, we look very carefully at where we spend, but we also try to spend in places that are going to make sure that everybody increases in well-being.
Okay, from a Green Party point of view, when you talk about mitigation, and I appreciate that, does the disaster in British Columbia, the floods, we just saw the tornadoes in so many states in the U.S., like Kentucky and Illinois and Tennessee, is this a wake-up call that in fact all those measures on mitigation, on change have to be accelerated from your point of view?
Absolutely, 100%. And we've been seeing these wake-up calls in other places, and this year, I think, has brought it home more than anything else. Heat domes, fires, followed by floods, tornadoes, etc. So yes, absolutely. We don't think anything has been moving nearly quick enough, and this is exactly the moment we should be digging in.
Okay, Amita Kuttner, the interim Green Party leader. Great to have you on the program and getting this is your first reaction, I think, to a fiscal update as the interim leader. So good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Evan.